Ty was 29 years old when I found out that every summer my parents sent me to my aunt's house. They were not staying home to save money. They were not working extra shifts. They were not too exhausted for travel, like they told me. They were taking my brother on family vacations without me, and the worst part was not even the trips, was not the beach photos, or the hotel bracelets, or the matching shirts I never got to wear. It was realizing that for almost my entire childhood, everyone in my house had agreed to tell the same gentle lie. They called it routine. They called it helping family. They called it what was best for me. But years later, at my brother's engagement party, I stood in a rented banquet room with a paper plate of cake in my hand and watched a slideshow of my family smiling in places I had been told we could never afford to go. Disney, Myrtle Beach, the Grand Canyon, a lake cabin with a dock and a red canoe. My parents were in every picture. My brother Ryan was in every picture. I was not in any of them. At first, I thought I was misunderstanding. That is what I had been trained to do when something hurt. Look for the explanation that made it smaller. Maybe these were school trips. Maybe they were from weekends I forgot. Maybe I had been sick. Maybe I was taking the photo. Then a picture appeared of Ryan at about 12 years old, grinning under a sign that said Hilton Head Island. He was missing one front tooth. My mother had a sunburn across her nose. My father was holding up two thumbs like the awkward dad he always pretended not to be. I knew that year. That was the summer Aunt June taught me how to make peach jam because my parents said they had too much going on and she needed help around the house. I remembered standing over a boiling pot in her kitchen, sweating through an old t-shirt, trying to be cheerful, because Mom said Aunt June was lonely, and I was old enough to be useful. The screen, 12-year-old Ryan was holding a boogie board. Beside me, Ryan's fiancée, Natalie, leaned over and said, "Were you camera shy as a kid?" She meant it kindly. That almost made it worse. Before I could answer, my brother laughed from the next table. "Claire hated trips," he said. "She always wanted to go to Aunt June's instead." My mother smiled into her wine glass. My father did not look at me, and for one strange second the room seemed to tilt. Because I had never hated trips, I had never been asked. My name is Claire Bennett, and growing up, I thought my family had one simple summer tradition. Every June, about a week after school ended, my mother would start saying things like, "You know your aunt counts on you," and "Some kids would love a peaceful summer in the country, and Ryan needs a little time with us before his camps start." Then she would pack my suitcase. Not with vacation clothes, practical clothes, shorts that were already a little faded, sneakers with enough life left in them, 3 books from the library, and a list of chores she said Aunt June might appreciate. My brother Ryan would stand in the hallway eating cereal from the box, watching me like I was going to some mysterious punishment camp. "Tell Aunt June her house smells weird," he would say. Would tell him to shut up. Mom would snap, "Claire, don't start." That was a sentence I heard often. Don't start. Not Ryan, stop teasing her. Not both of you, be kind. Just Claire, don't start. By the time I was 10, I had learned that in my family, being the first person to show hurt meant you were the person causing trouble. Tryon was 2 years younger than me. Blonde where I was brown-haired, easy where I was careful, charming where I was intense. That was how my parents described us, though never in one sentence. Ryan was easygoing. Claire was particular. Ryan was energetic. Claire was sensitive. Ryan was all boy. Claire needed structure. Structure was one of my mother's favorite words. If I cried because Ryan broke something of mine, I needed structure. If I asked why he got new shoes and I got his hand-me-down backpack, I needed gratitude. If I did not want to spend 8 weeks away from home, I needed to stop making everything dramatic. Aunt June lived 2 hours north of us in a small town where the grocery store closed at 8, and everyone seemed to know what everyone else had planted in their garden. She was my father's older sister, though they did not look much alike. My dad was soft-spoken and conflict-avoidant. Aunt June was short-blunt and built like someone who could carry a dresser downstairs by herself if the situation annoyed her enough. She had a white farmhouse with blue shutters, a vegetable garden, and a screened porch where she drank coffee before sunrise. She was not married. She had no children. She worked at the county library and drove a green pickup truck with a cracked dashboard and a cassette player that only accepted one tape, a greatest hits album from a singer she claimed had never once lied to a woman in song. When I was little, I thought Aunt June was strict. Not cruel, just strict in a way that made sense. At her house, if you used the last of the milk, you wrote it on the list. If you tracked mud in, you mopped it. If you said you were fine while crying, she would hand you a tissue and say, "Try again with less nonsense." The first summer I remember staying with her, I was 8. My parents told me Aunt June had hurt her back and needed someone to help. Was proud at first. 8-year-old me believed being useful was the closest thing to being chosen. I packed my own bag and imagined Aunt June smiling with relief when I arrived. On the drive, Mom kept telling me how mature I was. "Ryan is still too little for this kind of thing," she said, adjusting the air conditioning vent. "But you understand responsibility." Dad nodded from the driver's seat. "That's right, kiddo. We can always count on you." I remember glowing under that praise. That is embarrassing to admit, but it is true. Children will eat crumbs if crumbs are what affection looks like in their house. When we got to Aunt June's, she was standing on the porch in jeans and a red bandana, holding a mug of coffee. She did not look injured. She looked suspicious. Mom got out of the car first and hugged her too tightly. "Thank you so much," Mom said. Aunt June looked over her shoulder at me. "You bring sunscreen?" she asked. I nodded. "Books?" Nodded again. "Good, come inside. Your mother is going to pretend she has time for coffee, then remember she doesn't." Mom laughed too loudly. Dad carried my suitcase to the porch, kissed the top of my head and said, "Be good for your aunt, not have fun, not call us if you miss us, be good." That was the first summer. For 8 weeks, I helped Aunt June weed the garden, sort donated books at the library, hang laundry on the line and make simple dinners. I slept in the small back bedroom with yellow curtains and a quilt that smelled like cedar. At night, I read until the air cooled enough to sleep. I missed home so badly the first 2 weeks that I would sit in the bathroom with the fan on and cry into a towel. Aunt June heard me anyway. The third night she knocked once and opened the door before I answered. "You done pretending that towel is a person?" she asked. I was mortified. She sat on the edge of the tub and handed me a clean washcloth. "Your folks call?" I shook my head. "You want to call them?" I nodded. She took me to the kitchen and let me use the wall phone. Mom answered on the 5th ring, breathless and bright. "Hi, honey. Everything okay?" I said yes because Aunt June was standing there. Mom said, "Good. We're right in the middle of something. Ryan spilled juice all over the couch. Can we talk this weekend?" In the background, I heard Ryan laughing. I asked if he missed me. Mom paused. "Of course he does, but you know Ryan, he keeps busy." Then she told me to be helpful, told me she loved me, and hung up. I stood there with the receiver still in my hand. Aunt June took it gently and put it back on the cradle. "That help?" asked. Shook my head. "No," she said. "Sometimes it doesn't." Then she made me toast with butter and cinnamon sugar. She did not tell me to stop crying. She did not tell me I was ungrateful. She just sat at the table and worked a crossword while I ate. That was the first time I understood that comfort did not always sound soft. Sometimes it sounded like someone staying in the room without asking you to become easier to love. When I came home at the end of that summer, Ryan had a tan. I remember it because he was usually pale by July, the kind of kid who burned first and complained second. That year, his arms were brown, his hair lighter from the sun. "Did you go swimming?" I asked. He looked at Mom. Mom said, "Community pool." A few times Ryan nodded too fast. I believed them. Why would I not? The second summer I did not want to go. I was 9, old enough to understand that 8 weeks was a long time and young enough to think if I protested correctly, someone might change the plan. "Can Ryan go this year?" I asked while Mom folded laundry. She did not even look up. Aunt June's house is not a playground. I know. Ryan would be bored. I get bored. Mom sighed in that way that made me feel like I had placed a heavy object on her back. "Claire, your aunt appreciates you. Why do you always have to turn something nice into a complaint?" That sentence did what it was meant to do. It made me defend the wrong thing. "I'm not complaining." "Then act like it." So I went. That became the rhythm. Every summer, the explanation changed slightly, but the outcome stayed the same. When I was 10, Aunt June supposedly needed help repainting the porch. When I was 11, Mom said money was tight and it would be more sensible for me to spend the summer there while Ryan did baseball camp. When I was 12, Dad said I had been moody all spring and the quiet would be good for me. When I was 13, Mom said Aunt June asked for me specifically. When I was 14, they stopped explaining much at all. "You know the plan," Mom said, dropping a stack of folded clothes on my bed. The plan, like weather, like taxes, like something no one had invented and therefore no one could be blamed for. I want to be clear about something. Aunt June's house was not a nightmare. In many ways, those summers saved me. She taught me practical things my parents never had the patience for. How to drive a riding mower in straight lines. How to budget grocery money. How to tell when peaches were ready. How to change a tire. How to make coffee strong enough that she called it a conversation with God, if God had manners. She took me to the library every weekday. At first, I sat behind the desk and stamped due dates because the old system still used paper cards for half the collection. Later, I shelved books, helped with children's reading hour, and learned how quiet adults could say cruel things in polite voices when their fines were more than they expected. Aunt June paid me $10 a week and called it wages. My mother called it spoiling. She doesn't need money, Mom said once when Aunt June handed me a folded bill before we drove home. She's 13. Aunt June looked at her and said, then she can practice having some before the world charges her rent. Mom laughed like she thought that was a joke. It was not a joke. Aunt June was the first adult who treated me like I would one day need myself. Still, loving parts of those summers did not erase the ache of being sent away. That is a hard thing to explain to people who want pain to be simple. Yes, I loved Aunt June. Yes, her house became safer than mine in many ways. Yes, I learned skills there that still hold my life together. And yes, I still spent every June watching my parents pack me into a car and drive away with my brother in the back seat, knowing they would spend the next 8 weeks becoming a family without me. Only I did not know the last part yet. I thought they were at home. Thought Ryan was going to day camps, local pools, sleepovers, the kinds of things boys did in our neighborhood while their sisters were away. I thought my parents were tired, broke, and grateful that I was helping. That version hurt, but it was survivable. The truth had been sitting behind it the whole time, smiling for pictures. The first crack appeared when I was 15. I was helping Aunt June clean out the storage room behind the library after a pipe leak. It was July, hot enough that the walls seemed to sweat. We were moving boxes of old magazines when I found a postcard wedged behind a metal shelf. It had a picture of a lighthouse on the front. On the back, in Ryan's messy handwriting, it said, "Wish you were here, except not really because you would complain about the sand." There was no address, no stamp, just my name, Claire. I laughed at first because it sounded exactly like Ryan. Then I turned it over and saw the printed location, Outer Banks. My stomach tightened. That summer, my parents had told me money was too tight for anything extra. Dad's hours had been cut. Mom said we all had to be sensible. She sent me to Aunt June's with 3 library books and a lecture about not asking for unnecessary things. Where did this come from? I asked. Aunt June was lifting a box onto a table. She looked at the postcard, and something in her face closed. Where'd you find that? Behind the shelf. Huh. Why would Ryan write me a postcard from the Outer Banks? She wiped her hands on her jeans. Maybe one of his friends went. That was the first and only time I remember Aunt June lying badly. I was 15, not stupid. It says my name. Lots of people know your name. Aunt June. She stared at me for a long moment, then looked toward the library door like she was hoping someone would walk in and interrupt. No one did. Ask your mother, she said finally. Why? Because it's her story to tell badly. That answer made no sense to me then. Now I think it was Aunt June doing math in her head. How much truth I could carry. How much right she had to give it. How much damage would be done if she told me before I had a place to land. When I called Mom that night, she dismissed it so quickly I almost believed her. Oh, that, she said. Ryan went with the Donnellys for 3 days. Forgot all about it. To the beach? Yes, Claire, to the beach. People are allowed to go places. You said money was too tight. It didn't cost us anything. The Donnellys invited him. Why didn't you tell me? There was a pause. Then Mom said, because you get like this, curious, hurt, aware. Like what? You turn everything into a fairness trial. I remember sitting on Aunt June's kitchen floor with the phone cord stretched across the room, pressing my back against the cabinet. I just asked a question, and I answered. Now please don't ruin your aunt's evening with one of your moods. After we hung up, Aunt June put a bowl of vanilla ice cream beside me without speaking. I did not eat it. She sat across from me on the floor, which was not easy for her because her knees were bad. Your mothers say it was the Donnelly family? She asked. I nodded. Aunt June looked at the ceiling and muttered a word I was not supposed to hear. Was it not? She rubbed her forehead. Claire, please don't lie. That made her look at me. For a second, I thought she would tell me everything. Instead, she said, there are times in life when adults make a mess and then call the mess a plan. You are allowed to notice the smell, even if they tell you the room is clean. What does that mean? Means keep your eyes open. That was all she would say. Looking back, I understand why some people will be angry at Aunt June for not telling me sooner. A part of me was angry too for a while. But I also know what she knew. I was a minor. My parents controlled where I lived, where I went, who I could call, how much access I had to anyone who believed me. If Aunt June had blown everything open when I was 15, my parents could have cut her off completely. And then I would have lost the only adult who was quietly keeping a light on for me. The second crack came a year later, was 16, and Ryan had just turned 14. By then, he had grown into the kind of boy adults described as confident, when they meant he had never been made to doubt he was welcome. He was funny, careless, and handsome in the easy way that makes people forgive small cruelties before they finish happening. That summer, Mom told me Aunt June needed help after a minor surgery. Aunt June had not had surgery. She had a dentist appointment and a new dishwasher. When I arrived, she took one look at my face and said, "What reason did they give this time?" "Your surgery." She snorted. "My dentist will be thrilled to know he performed an organ transplant," laughed because she did. Then I cried because I understood she had not asked for me. Aunt June let me cry for about 3 minutes, then said, "Good. Now wash your face. We're going to the farmer's market and I refuse to pay $8 for sad tomatoes." That was Aunt June's style. She did not rescue you from pain. She made sure pain did not become the only thing you did that day. 2 weeks into that summer, Ryan called the house phone by accident. I know it was an accident because when I answered, he said, "Mom," without even listening. "No," I said, "it's me." There was a burst of noise behind him. Wind. Music. Someone laughing. Then Ryan said, "Oh, where are you?" "Nowhere." "Nowhere has music. Shut up." I heard my father in the background say, "Ryan, come on, we're boarding." Boarding. The word hit me before I understood it. Boarding what? Ryan went quiet. "Ryan, I have to go." "Boarding what?" He hung up, stood in Aunt June's kitchen with the dead receiver in my hand, listening to the dial tone until it became a sound inside my bones. When Aunt June came in from the garden, I told her. She closed her eyes. Just for 1 second. Then she said, "Sit down. Are they flying somewhere?" "Sit down first." "You know." She did not answer. "You know?" Her silence was the answer. Something changed in me then. Not broke exactly. Breaking is loud. This was quieter. It was like a door inside me locked from the other side. "Where did they go?" I asked. Aunt June pulled out a chair and sat across from me. "I don't know where this year." "This year." "Not if." "Where?" My hands went cold. "How many years?" She looked older than I had ever seen her. "Claire." "How many?" "More than one." "How many?" She did not say it. She did not have to. I got up so fast, the chair scraped the floor. For the first time in my life, I packed my bag to leave Aunt June's house. I did not have a plan. Was 16, 2 hours from home, with $43 in birthday money and no car. But humiliation can make movement feel like strategy. I threw clothes into my suitcase while Aunt June stood in the doorway. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Home." "I don't know." "Then don't make me ask the second question." "What second question?" "Home to who?" That stopped me. I hated her for asking it. I hated her because it was the correct question. Home to who? To parents who had just put my brother on a plane without telling me. To an empty house. To neighbors who would ask why I was there alone. To a locked door maybe, because I did not even have my own key that summer. Mom said I was irresponsible with small things. I sat on the edge of the bed and folded forward until I could not breathe properly. Aunt June came in and sat beside me. She did not hug me right away. She knew better than to touch me when I felt trapped. She just sat close enough that I knew she was there. "I should have told you," she said. That made me cry harder. "Why didn't you?" "Because I was afraid they would stop sending you." "Good." "No," she said sharply. "Not good." I looked at her. Her eyes were wet, which frightened me more than my own crying. "You think I like being part of this?" she asked. "You think I enjoyed opening my door every June and knowing why you were really there?" Argued. "I called your father a coward more than once. I told your mother she was teaching you exactly where you stood. You know what she said?" I shook my head. Aunt June's mouth tightened. She said, "At least with me, you had someone who could handle you, handle me. Not love me, not care for me. Handle me." That word became a splinter I carried for years. Aunt June reached for my hand then. I let her take it. I kept saying yes because if I said no, they would not suddenly become better parents. They would find another place to put you. A camp. A friend's house. Some church program. Somewhere you had no one. I could not stop them from excluding you, but I could make sure the place they sent you had food, books, locks on the doors, and one adult who knew you were not the problem. I wanted that to be enough. It was not, but it mattered. Both things were true. That night, Aunt June showed me the box. It was in the bottom of her bedroom closet, under winter blankets and a plastic tub of Christmas ornaments. A plain cardboard file box with my name written on the side in black marker. Claire. Inside were folders organized by year, receipts, printed emails, photocopies of checks, postcards Ryan wrote, and my mother apparently told him not to send. Photos printed from social media before posts disappeared. Letters Aunt June had written to my father and never mailed because she said calling him an idiot on paper felt satisfying but legally unhelpful. I remember touching the folders like they might burn me. Why do you have all this? Aunt June sat on the floor with a grunt because someday you were going to be old enough to ask. And I wanted you to know you were not crazy. Not crazy. It is hard to describe what those words do for a child who has been trained to distrust her own perception. They did not fix anything. They did not make my parents love me correctly, but they gave me something solid to stand on. The first folder was the summer I was 8, the one with the fake back injury. There was an email from my mother to Aunt June, printed in black and white. June, can you keep Claire from the 14th through August 9th? Mark and I think Ryan needs a calmer summer this year. Claire has been very intense lately, and every trip turns into managing her feelings. We can send grocery money. Below it, Aunt June had printed her reply. Linda, Claire is 8. If every trip turns into managing her feelings, then manage them. That is parenting. My mother wrote back, please do not make this harder. Ryan deserves 1 week where everything is easy. Ryan deserves 1 week where everything is easy. Read that sentence 3 times. Then I looked at Aunt June. 1 week. She looked away. The receipts in the folder answered before she could. Orlando Hotel, theme park tickets, airport parking, matching family breakfast package. The dates overlapped with my first 2 weeks at Aunt June's house. Not all 8 weeks. Just the trip at first. That was how it began. A week here. 10 days there. My parents sent me away for the whole summer because it was easier than explaining the gap. The second folder was worse because it had photos. Ryan at the beach with a plastic shovel. Mom in sunglasses, smiling wider than I had seen her smile in months. Dad holding Ryan on his shoulders in the ocean. On the back of one photo, in my mother's handwriting, it said, "Our little family, finally relaxed." I stared at the words until they stopped looking like language. Our little family. I was alive when she wrote that. I existed. I was 2 hours away, alphabetizing donated paperbacks, and trying not to cry on Aunt June's bathroom floor. Aunt June reached over and took the photo from my hand. Enough for tonight. No. Claire, no. I want to see. She let me see. That is one thing I will always thank her for. She did not protect me by hiding the truth once the door was open. She sat beside me while I looked at every ugly piece of it. The summer I was 10, they went to the Grand Canyon. Ty had a memory from that same week of Aunt June taking me to the county fair. She bought me a lemonade and let me ride the Ferris wheel twice because the first time I spent the whole ride pretending I was not scared. I had thought it was one of the best days of my life. The folder, there was a picture of Ryan standing with my parents at a scenic overlook, arms spread wide like he owned the sky. The caption printed from an old photo site said Bennett Family Adventure. The summer I was 11, they went to a lake resort. That was the summer Mom told me I needed to be understanding because Dad was worried about money. The folder had receipts for a boat rental and a seafood restaurant where one dinner cost more than Aunt June spent on groceries in 2 weeks. The summer I was 12, they went to Disney again. That one hurt in a childish place I thought I had outgrown. I had wanted to go to Disney since I was 6. Not in a demanding way. Had a jar labeled castle money where I put coins I found in parking lots. Dad used to laugh and say maybe someday bug. Maybe someday had apparently arrived many times. Just not for me. There was a photo of Ryan wearing mouse ears and eating ice cream shaped like a cartoon character. My mother had one arm around him. My father was looking at them with an expression so openly happy I had to put the picture down. Did he know? I asked. Aunt June did not pretend not to understand. Ryan? I nodded. At first, probably not much. He was little. Later, yeah, children believe what adults allow them to believe. He wrote the postcard. Yes, he knew enough to mock me. Aunt June sighed. Yes, that yes hurt more than a paragraph would have. We did not call my parents that night. What would I have said? I know. Come get me. Why don't you want me? There are questions you cannot ask because the person who should answer them has already answered through years of behavior. The next morning, Aunt June made pancakes, which she almost never did because she said, breakfast should not require a bowl larger than your head. She put a plate in front of me and said, you can hate them and eat. I did both. For the rest of that summer, I moved through Aunt June's house like someone recovering from a fever. Some days I wanted to talk about it until every word was used up. Some days I wanted no one to mention my family at all. Aunt June adjusted without making a performance of it. She taught me how to drive the pickup in the empty church parking lot, opened a savings account with me at the local credit union, and put my library wages in it. She helped me apply for a part-time shelving job for the next summer so I would have a reason to be there that belonged to me. And every Sunday evening when my mother called, Aunt June let me decide whether to answer. The first time I did not pick up. Mom left a voicemail. Claire, This sulking is not fair to your aunt. Call me back when you can be pleasant. I played it 3 times, not because I wanted to hear her voice, but because I wanted to study how easily she turned my silence into bad manners. Aunt June listened once. Delete it, she said. What if I need it? For what? I don't know. She took a breath. Then save it. But don't sleep with it under your pillow. That was how Aunt June taught boundaries. Not as grand speeches, as small acts of not feeding the thing that bit you. When my parents came to pick me up at the end of August, they were tanned. I saw it immediately. Mom wore long sleeves even though it was hot, but the line at her wrist gave her away. Dad had a peeling spot on his nose. Tryon had a woven bracelet around his ankle. How was home, I asked. They all froze in tiny ways. Mom recovered first. Quiet without you, she said brightly. Really? Of course. Ryan looked out the window. Dad loaded my suitcase without meeting my eyes. In the car, Mom asked why I seemed moody. I said no reason. She sighed. Was hoping Aunt June would help with this attitude. I looked out the window and watched the fields pass by. Something had shifted. My parents did not know it yet. They thought they were bringing home the same daughter they had dropped off. They were not. The daughter they dropped off still believed there was a correct way to earn her place. The daughter they brought home was beginning to understand the place had never been empty by accident. For the next 2 years, I played along. That is the part of the story people sometimes judge from a distance. Why did you not confront them? Why did you not tell a teacher? Why did you not refuse to go? The simple answer is that I was a teenager, and teenagers are still dependent on the adults who hurt them. The more honest answer is that I was not ready to hear them deny what I knew. Denial from strangers is irritating. Denial from parents can rearrange your bones. So I waited, went to Aunt June's house at 17 and again at 18, though by then it felt less like exile and more like evacuation. I worked at the library. I saved money. I took online community college classes early because Aunt June said boredom was how resentment learned to drive. My parents continued their trips. They got less careful because I stopped asking questions. I saw a luggage tag on Ryan's backpack once. San Diego. I found sunscreen in Mom's purse in September. Dad accidentally mentioned the rental car place in Denver at dinner, then coughed and changed the subject. Every time, I filed it away in my mind beside Aunt June's folders. At 18, I left for college on a scholarship and never moved home again. My parents cried at drop-off. That surprised me. Mom hugged me so tightly I could smell her perfume and hairspray, the scent of every parent-teacher night where she had smiled like we were normal. Call us, she said. Dad slipped me $200 and said, emergencies. Tryon gave me a side hug and said, don't become one of those weird campus people. I laughed because it was easier. As they drove away, I stood on the sidewalk with my duffel bag and waited for grief to arrive. Instead, I felt relief, so strong it scared me. College was not easy. I worked 2 jobs. I ate too many microwave noodles. Ty spent the first semester flinching whenever someone was kind to me without wanting something. But I also learned that I was not inherently difficult. My roommate, Tessa, once borrowed my sweater and returned it washed. I almost cried. What? Nothing, she asked. No. You just gave it back. She looked at me like I had said the moon was Tuesday. That was college for me. A series of small discoveries that other people did not treat basic consideration like a luxury item. I called Aunt June every Sunday. I called my parents every other week. The calls with my parents stayed carefully pleasant. Weather, classes, Ryan's sports, Mom's work, Dad's knee, nothing with roots. When I came home for holidays, my room had been turned into a storage space by sophomore year. We thought you wouldn't mind, Mom said. I did mind. I said I did not. Aunt June heard about it and said, next time, stay with me. So I did. By my mid-20s, had built a life that looked stable from the outside. Worked as a project coordinator for a non-profit housing organization. I had a small apartment with plants I mostly kept alive, friends who knew not to surprise me with group vacations, and a habit of spending 1 week every summer with Aunt June by choice. My parents described this as me being independent. Was easier for them than saying distant. Tryon, meanwhile, became exactly the adult my parents had rehearsed him to be. Not terrible. That is important. Ryan was not a villain twirling a mustache over childhood vacation photos. He was funny, social, and generous when generosity did not cost him comfort. He remembered birthdays if someone reminded him. He could charm a room in 10 minutes and leave someone else to clean up the cups. He worked in sales. Of course he did. When he got engaged to Natalie, my mother called me crying with happiness. Your brother is getting married, she said as if he had personally invented commitment. I said, congratulations. You sound flat. I'm at work. Claire. There it was again. My name is a warning. I'm happy for him, I said. I hope so. This is a special time for our family, our family. By then, that phrase had a long hallway behind it. The engagement party was held in a banquet room attached to a golf club my parents could suddenly afford because weddings rearrange people's financial priorities in fascinating ways. There were white tablecloths, framed photos of Ryan and Natalie, and a dessert table my mother kept calling simple, even though it had custom cookies with their initials printed in gold. Aunt June came with me. She wore navy pants, a white blouse, and the expression of a woman entering enemy territory with good posture. Be civil, I told her in the parking lot. I am always civil. You once told Dad he had the spine of boiled pasta. Civilly. I laughed despite myself. Inside, Mom greeted Aunt June with the stiff warmth people use when witnesses are inconvenient. June. How nice you could make it. Wouldn't miss it, Aunt June said. Dad hugged me and said I looked good, then immediately asked if I had seen Ryan's promotion announcement online. I had. Ryan hugged me with one arm, holding a beer in the other hand. Claire Bear, he said. I hated that nickname. He knew that. Congratulations, I said. Thanks. Can you believe someone agreed to marry me? No. He laughed like that was affectionate. Natalie was lovely. That was inconvenient. She had kind eyes and the slightly overwhelmed energy of someone marrying into a family that had already handed her a script. She hugged me with both arms and said, I'm so glad to finally spend time with you. Tryon talks about you like you're this mysterious genius who lives in the city and appears only for major holidays. That sounds more interesting than the truth, I said. I don't know. I like mysterious. For a while the party was fine. Fine is an underrated survival state. I ate cheese cubes. I made small talk with cousins. June stood near the coffee urn and said just enough to make people unsure whether she liked them. Then my mother tapped a glass with a spoon and announced a slideshow. Just a few memories of our sweet boy, she said. Ryan groaned theatrically. Natalie smiled. The lights dimmed, and my childhood appeared on a white screen without me in it. First, it was baby pictures. Ryan in a high chair, Ryan in a dinosaur costume, Ryan asleep on Dad's chest. Normal things. Then came the vacations. Orlando year after year, beach trips, cabins, national parks, cruise ship deck chairs, Ryan with Mickey ears, Ryan holding a fishing pole, Ryan ziplining, Tryon standing between my parents in matching shirts that said Bennett Family Summer Tour. People laughed and clapped. My mother dabbed her eyes. My father looked proud. Aunt June's hand found my elbow. I had known, of course. I had seen the box. I had seen the proof. But there is a difference between knowing a thing in a private room and watching it celebrated in public by the people who did it. The slideshow did not hide me. It erased me confidently. That confidence is what made me cold. Halfway through, Natalie leaned over and asked the question. Were you camera shy as a kid? And Ryan answered before I could. Claire hated trips. She always wanted to go to Aunt June's instead. My mother smiled. My father looked down. The room kept breathing around me. I turned to Ryan. Is that what you think? He blinked, still smiling a little because he had not yet realized we were in a real conversation. What? That I wanted to be sent away every summer. The smile faded. Mom appeared at my side with the speed of a woman who could smell public discomfort from across a ballroom. Claire, not tonight. That sentence snapped something old. Not tonight. As if there had ever been a correct night. As if they had spent 20 years waiting patiently for me to schedule my pain at a more convenient time. I looked at her. When? Mom's face tightened. This is your brother's engagement party. I know. I'm watching his family vacation slideshow. Natalie looked from me to Ryan. Wait, she said softly. You weren't on those trips? No one answered. Silence can be a confession if everyone hears the same question and chooses the floor. Ryan set his beer down. Claire, come on. No, I'm curious. You said I hated trips. He rubbed the back of his neck. That's what Mom said. Mom gave a small laugh. This is ridiculous. You loved being at June's. Aunt June spoke then. She loved being loved at my house. That is not the same as choosing exile. The word exile landed hard. Several people turned. My father finally said June. Aunt June looked at him. Mark. One word each, and somehow hers had more bones in it. Mom lowered her voice. We are not doing this here. I said, you put it on a screen. That was the first time I saw fear in my mother's face. Not guilt fear. Guilt asks what it has done. Fear asks who else can see. The slideshow continued behind us because no one had thought to stop it. On the screen, 10-year-old Ryan stood at the Grand Canyon with his arms spread wide. My mother turned toward the laptop, fumbling with the trackpad. The image froze. The room was now fully watching. I wish I could tell you I gave a perfect speech. I did not. Perfect speeches happen in movies and showers. Real confrontations are clumsy. Your voice shakes. Your timing is bad. You forget the line that would have ended the argument beautifully. All I said was, I asked to go with you. Mom closed her eyes. Claire, I asked every year until you taught me not to. Dad said, it was complicated. I laughed once. Sounded nothing like me. No, it was simple. You had one child you wanted to relax with, and one child you wanted someone else to handle. The room went very still. Ryan looked genuinely confused, which somehow hurt more than if he had looked guilty. Handle? He said. Aunt June's grip tightened on my elbow. Mom whispered, you don't understand what it was like. That sentence was a door to a familiar room. I could have walked in. I could have listened to her explain that I was sensitive, intense, difficult, demanding, anxious, too much. I could have let the conversation become an autopsy of my childhood personality instead of their choices. For the first time, I did not. No, I said. I understand exactly what it was like. I was there for the part you edited out. Natalie stepped back from Ryan, not dramatically, just enough. Ryan noticed. Nat, it's not like that, she looked at him. Then what is it like? He opened his mouth and closed it. My mother touched his arm, protective even then. This is family history, she said to Natalie. Every family has things that sound strange out of context. Aunt June gave a short laugh. Linda, the context is worse. Dad said enough. It was the voice he used when he wanted authority without conflict. For years, that voice had worked on me. That night, it did not. You are right, I said. Enough. Then I walked out. Not because I was above making a scene. I had already made one. I walked out because I could feel the room trying to pull me into its old shape. Mom as the manager of reality. Dad as the tired mediator. Ryan as the protected center. Me as the problem everyone wished would calm down. Outside, the night air was cold enough to sting. Stood near the parking lot, breathing too fast, while music thumped faintly through the banquet room wall. Aunt June came out 30 seconds later carrying my coat and a dessert napkin full of cookies. Emergency rations, she said. I started laughing. Then I started crying. She put my coat around my shoulders and stood beside me until both things passed. Well, she said eventually, that was overdue. I ruined his party. No, your mother put evidence in PowerPoint. That made me laugh again, harder this time. Then the door opened. Ryan came out, alone. He looked younger than 30, standing there in his nice shirt with his hands in his pockets. Can we talk? He asked. Aunt June looked at me. I nodded. She said, I'll be in the car. If he says something stupid, you do not have to educate him. Ryan watched her go. She hates us, he said. No, I said. She knows you. He flinched. Good. We stood under the yellow parking lot lights, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Ryan finally said, I thought you knew. I looked at him. What? About the trips. I thought you knew and just preferred Aunt June's. When I was 8, he swallowed. No, not then. When I was 10. Claire. When? He looked toward the building. I don't know. That is convenient. I was a kid too. Yes, I said. You were, so was I. He rubbed both hands over his face. Mom said you hated traveling. She said you got overwhelmed, and Aunt June was better with you. She said family vacations were supposed to be relaxing, and when you came, everyone had to walk on eggshells. There it was, the official story. Not that I was excluded, that I was mercifully absent. Did you believe her? Ryan did not answer quickly enough. I wanted to, he said. That was more honest than I expected. Why? Because the trips were fun. The simplicity of that almost knocked the breath out of me. The trips were fun. Of course they were. Sunburns, hotel pools, theme parks, parents who relaxed because the child they found complicated was elsewhere. Ryan's face twisted. That sounded awful. It was honest. I'm sorry. I looked at him. Really looked at him. There were many versions of sorry. Some were keys. Some were receipts. Some were blankets people threw over a mess so they could stop seeing it. I did not know which one his was yet. For what? I asked. He frowned. What do you mean? I mean, what are you sorry for? He opened his mouth, then stopped. The first time all night, he seemed to understand that a vague apology would not work. I'm sorry I enjoyed it, he said slowly. I'm sorry I didn't ask more questions when I got older. I'm sorry I repeated what Mom said like it was true. And I'm sorry I made jokes about Aunt June's because it made me feel like you were the weird one. Not us. That one reached me. Not enough to fix anything, but enough to let me breathe. Thank you, I said. He nodded, eyes wet. Natalie's upset. She should be. I know. Do you? He looked away. I'm trying. That was the most Ryan answer possible. Not noble. Not useless. Somewhere in the uncomfortable middle. The door opened again. This time, Mom came out with Dad behind her. Mom's face had rearranged itself into wounded dignity. I knew that expression. It meant she had moved from panic to defense. Claire, she said, we need to talk. No, Aunt June called from the car. Mom ignored her. You embarrassed your brother in front of his future in-laws. There it was. Not we hurt you. Not we should have told the truth. You embarrassed your brother. The old reflex rose in me. Explain. Soften. Prove that I had not meant to cause trouble. Make myself smaller so everyone else could return to dinner. Then I saw the frozen image through the banquet room window. Ryan at the Grand Canyon. My parents beside him. The caption still glowing faintly on the screen. Bennett family adventure. I said, "You embarrassed yourselves." I just recognized the pictures. Dad looked tired. "Claire, please." "No, Dad. You do not get to please this down to a manageable size." Mom's eyes flashed. "You have no idea how hard those years were." "For who?" "For all of us. I was a child." "You were not an easy child." Ryan made a sound under his breath. For once it was not directed at me. Mom turned to him. "Ryan, honey, go back inside." "No," he said. That one word changed the air. Mom looked stunned. Ryan looked stunned too. I would have enjoyed it more if I had not been so tired. "I want to hear this," he said. Dad said, "Son, this is between your sister and us." "No," Ryan said again. Apparently it was about me the whole time. Aunt June got out of the car slowly, like a storm putting on shoes. "Careful, Mark," she said. "This is the part where truth starts charging interest." Mom pointed at her. "You have been waiting for this." Aunt June's face hardened. "Have been waiting 21 years for you to stop making your daughter pay for having feelings." Mom recoiled like she had been slapped. I loved Claire. I believed strangely that she thought she did. That was one of the hardest parts. My mother was not standing there thinking, "I hated my daughter and enjoyed excluding her." She was thinking, "I did my best with a difficult child and now everyone is punishing me for surviving." People can hurt you deeply while seeing themselves as the tired hero of the story. "Maybe you loved me," I said, "but you did not like having me around." Mom opened her mouth. No sound came out. Dad looked at the pavement. That was confirmation enough. Went home with Aunt June that night. Not to her farmhouse. She had sold it 2 years earlier when the stairs became too much and bought a small ranch house closer to town. But in my mind, it was still Aunt June's house in the larger sense. The place where I did not have to argue for the right to take up space. The drive, neither of us talked for almost 20 minutes. Then she handed me her phone. "Your mother has called 6 times. You answer." "Absolutely not." I laughed weakly. "What do I do? Tonight?" "Nothing. That seems to be your favorite advice, because people underestimate the power of not handing an unstable person a fresh sentence." I looked out the window. Was I really that hard? Aunt June made a sound of pure disgust. "You were a child with a nervous stomach, a sharp mind, and parents who preferred ease to effort. Mom says I turned everything into a fairness trial. Children care about fairness because unfairness is one of the first forms of pain they can name." Thought about that. "Did I ruin trips?" "You were rarely invited to them, so that would have been a feat." "Before." Aunt June sighed. "When you were 6, there was a weekend at the lake. You cried because Ryan threw your stuffed rabbit into the water, and your mother said you ruined the afternoon by not getting over it." I remembered the rabbit, not the lake. "He threw Maribel?" "Yes. I thought I dropped her." "Your mother told you that because it was easier than making Ryan apologize and buying you a dry rabbit." The night outside the car seemed enormous. How many memories were like that? How many things had been softened, edited, reversed? Aunt June kept driving. The next year, she said, "You had a panic attack at a fireworks show because the noise was too much. Your father carried you to the car. Your mother spent the rest of the weekend telling everyone you were delicate." I was 7. Yes, so they stopped taking me? They stopped trying to understand what you needed. That distinction hurt because it was kinder. Because it was true. At Aunt June's house, she made tea and put a plate of engagement party cookies between us. The cookies had Ryan and Natalie's initials in gold icing. Aunt June bit into one and said, "Tastes like unresolved generational nonsense." I laughed into my tea. Then she went to her bedroom and came back with the box. The same box. Older now, reinforced with tape, my name faded but readable. "I added to it after you went to college," she said. "Why?" "Because people who rewrite history rarely stop after the first draft." Inside were the old folders and new ones. Engagement party printouts. Holiday emails. Screenshots of family posts where my parents used phrases like "our little family" and "complete again" when Ryan visited. A copy of a message my mother sent Aunt June after I chose not to come home one Thanksgiving. "She is punishing us by withholding herself. I hope you are proud of what you encouraged." To Aunt June's reply, "Linda, she is not withholding herself. She is placing herself where she is wanted. If that feels like punishment, sit with that." I read it twice. Did she answer? "No." "Good." "No," Aunt June said, sad, but peaceful. Then she handed me a folder I had never seen. It was labeled support money. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside were copies of checks my parents had sent Aunt June every summer. Grocery money, they called it. Help with Claire's expenses. Some years it was a few $100s, some years more. The amounts were not huge, but over a decade they added up. "I used some for your food and clothes," Aunt June said. "Some for books, some for school fees your mother forgot to mention. But I saved what I could. At the back of the folder was a bank statement. The account was in my name with Aunt June as custodian originally, then transferred fully to me when I turned 18. I stared at the balance. It was not life-changing money, but it was enough to pay off the last of my student loans. Enough to fix the transmission on my aging car. Enough to feel like the past had left one envelope on the table that did not contain only grief. June, don't get dramatic. It earns interest poorly. I covered my face. She reached across the table and squeezed my wrist. Every summer they sent money like that, made it clean. I took what they gave and made it yours. I started crying again, but this time it was different. Not less painful, just less alone. The next morning I woke up to 43 messages. Some from Mom, some from Dad, 3 from Ryan, 1 from Natalie. Mom's messages came in stages, like weather systems. First, panic. Please call me. We need to clear this up before people misunderstand. Then guilt. I cannot believe you would do this to your brother after everything we did for you. Then revision. You loved those summers. You used to beg to stay longer. Then accusation. June has filled your head with bitterness. Dad's messages were shorter. Call your mother. Please don't make this worse. We made mistakes, but this is not fair. That last one almost made me laugh. Not fair. There was that word again, returning after years of being treated like a childish obsession. Ryan's messages were different. I'm sorry about last night. I didn't know how much I didn't know. Can we talk without Mom? Natalie's message said, I am so sorry. You do not have to answer, but I believe you. Those 4 words sat in my chest for a long time. I believe you. Not, I need both sides. Not, there must be more to the story. Not, your mother seems so nice. I believe you. I answered Natalie first. Thank you. Then I answered Ryan. We can talk tomorrow. Without Mom. It did not answer my parents. That afternoon, Mom posted a family statement on social media. Not a public post. A private one, limited to relatives and close friends. But screenshots travel faster than shame expects. In it, she wrote that our family had experienced a painful misunderstanding at Ryan's engagement party. She said that when I was young, I had anxiety around travel and did better with quiet summers at Aunt June's. She said she and Dad made the best choices they could with the information they had. She said she hoped people would respect our privacy while we healed. It was beautifully written. That made me angrier. My mother had always been good at making cruelty sound like weather. Something unfortunate. Something no one controlled. Something we all had to dress around. I read the post once. Then I opened Aunt June's box. For 20 minutes I considered staying silent. Silence had protected me before. Silence had kept me housed, fed, relatively safe. Silence had let me get to adulthood without losing Aunt June. But I was not 16 anymore. My parents could not send me away now. They could only hope I would keep doing it for them. I did not make my own public post. I did not want a trial by comment section. Sent a single email to my parents, Ryan, Natalie, Aunt June, and 3 relatives who had already messaged me asking what happened. The subject line was no more misunderstandings. I wrote, I am not going to debate my childhood in fragments. Mom and Dad sent me to Aunt June's nearly every summer while they took vacations with Ryan. Was told they were staying home, saving money, working, or helping Aunt June. Those explanations were not true. I attached 5 documents, not the whole box, just enough. The email from Mom saying Ryan deserved 1 week where everything was easy. The Orlando receipts. The photo labeled our little family finally relaxed. The postcard from Ryan. The screenshot of Mom's message accusing Aunt June of encouraging me to place myself where I was wanted. Then I wrote, I am not asking anyone to choose sides. I am choosing honesty for myself. Please do not contact me to explain how hard this was for my parents. I was a child. They were adults. That will remain the center of the story. Pressed send before I could talk myself into becoming convenient again. The fallout was immediate. An aunt on my mother's side wrote back, simply, oh, Linda. That was somehow devastating. A cousin sent me a heart and said she always wondered why I was gone in the summer. My grandmother called Aunt June, not me, and apparently cried for 20 minutes because she had believed Mom when she said I preferred quiet visits. Mom called me 11 times. Dad called twice. Ryan did not call. He texted, I saw the email. I need a minute. I respected that. Minutes are sometimes the first honest thing people ask for. 2 days later, Ryan came to my apartment. He brought coffee and looked like he had not slept. I almost did not let him in. Then I remembered him standing in the parking lot saying, I wanted to believe her because the trips were fun. That was not enough, but it was a beginning. He sat at my small kitchen table, turning the coffee cup between his hands. Natalie moved back to her sister's for a few days, he said. I felt a pang of guilt and pushed it down. I'm sorry, don't be. She said she needs to understand what kind of family she's marrying into. Smart woman. He looked around my apartment like he had never really seen it before. The plants, the books, the framed photo of me and Aunt June at the library fundraiser. There were no pictures of our parents. I asked Mom for the truth, he said. How did that go? He laughed without humor. She cried. Dad said we should focus on healing. Mom said you were always more comfortable at June's. I asked if you were asked. She said children don't always know what is best for them. I took a slow breath. Then what? I asked why there were matching Bennett family summer tour shirts if you were part of the family. That one landed. I looked at him. Ryan's eyes filled. She said ordering one for you would have been cruel. I frowned. Cruel? Because you would have known you missed it. For a second, neither of us moved. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because my body had no better option. That is impressive, I said. I know. She excluded me from the shirt to protect me from knowing I was excluded from the trip. I know. Does she hear herself? No. He wiped his face. Dad did, though. That surprised me. What do you mean? When she said that, Dad looked, I don't know, sick. Like he heard it for the first time, even though he was there. That was my father, late to his own conscience, arriving with flowers after the funeral. He let it happen, I said. I know. He packed the car. I know. He took the pictures. Tryon nodded. I know. I believed then that he was beginning to. Ryan reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. This is not enough, he said before I could ask. I know that. It's not a fix. It's not forgiveness money. Natalie told me not to bring it because it might look like I was trying to buy my way out of guilt. Natalie is wise, but I wanted you to have it anyway. Inside was a check. The amount made me blink. Ryan, it's what Mom and Dad were going to contribute to our honeymoon. I don't want your honeymoon money. Good, because there might not be a honeymoon, Ryan. He shook his head. When I was a kid, I got trips you should have been on. Cannot go back and put you in those pictures. I cannot make Mom tell the truth. I cannot make Dad grow a spine 20 years ago. But I can refuse to let the next family celebration be funded by the same people who called excluding you relaxation. I pushed the envelope back. I am not taking this. Then donate it. Burn it. Put it toward therapy. I don't care. I just do not want it. I looked at him for a long time. Are you doing this because Natalie is upset? He winced. Partly. I appreciated the honesty. And because I am upset, he said, not in the way you deserve. I know that. But I keep seeing those pictures now and realizing I never wondered who was missing. That is a pretty ugly thing to learn about yourself. I did not comfort him. That was hard. Oldest daughters are often trained to manage the emotional weather of the room, even when the storm is not theirs. So I let him sit in the ugliness he had named. After a while I said, I don't hate you. He looked relieved too quickly. But I do not trust your version of family yet. The relief dimmed. That was good. Relief should not arrive before understanding. Okay, he said, if you want a relationship with me, it happens separately. Not through Mom, not through Dad, not through holidays where everyone pretends. Okay? And do not ever tell the story as if I chose those summers. He nodded. I won't. Even if Mom cries. Even then, that was the first boundary between my brother and me. Small, unsteady, but real. The bigger confrontation with my parents happened a week later. I did not want to do it at their house because that place knew too many old versions of me. Chose a public park near Aunt June's town, one with picnic tables under oak trees and enough open space that no one could corner anyone without looking ridiculous. Aunt June came with me. Not to fight my battle. Sit 10 yards away on a bench with a thermos of coffee and the expression of a woman willing to become a legal problem if necessary. Mom and Dad arrived together. Mom wore sunglasses even though it was cloudy. Dad carried a folder, which irritated me before I knew what was in it. Claire, Mom said, voice soft. That softness was dangerous. It was the voice she used when she wanted to be seen as wounded before anyone named what she had done. Mom. Dad. We sat at the picnic table. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Dad opened the folder. We wrote some things down, he said. I almost laughed. My family had discovered documentation and suddenly everyone wanted a folder. Okay, Dad, read first. He said they were sorry that I felt excluded. I stopped him there. No, he looked up. What? You are not sorry. I felt excluded. Was excluded. Try again with the noun where it belongs. Mom took off her sunglasses. Claire, we are trying. Then try accurately. Dad looked at the paper. His hands trembled. For all my anger, that detail hurt. He started again. We are sorry we excluded you. The words sounded unnatural in his mouth, like he had never had to carry them before. We told ourselves it was temporary at first. One trip. Then it became a habit. Then it became easier to keep the habit than explain it. Mom stared at him. I realized she had not approved that sentence. Dad continued anyway. That does not excuse it. I waited. Mom's jaw tightened. I loved you, she said. That is not an apology, is the truth. So is what you did. She looked toward Aunt June, who was pretending not to listen while obviously listening to every syllable. Your aunt has always judged me, maybe because you kept giving her evidence. Mom's face flushed. You were exhausting, Claire. There it was. The sentence under every sentence. Dad closed his eyes. Mom seemed almost relieved to have said it. You needed so much, she continued. Everything upset you. Loud places, changes in plans, Ryan teasing you, food touching on your plate, being tired, being hot. You cried at fireworks. You cried when rides were too fast. You cried when Ryan got attention. We were young. We were overwhelmed. And yes, sometimes it was easier to give Ryan 1 week where he did not have to live around your moods. I listened, not because she was right, because I wanted to hear the full shape of what she had used to justify herself. When she finished, I said, I was a child with anxiety. Mom looked away. Maybe. No, not maybe. I know now. Have a diagnosis. Have tools. I have therapy bills. I have an adult life built around learning not to apologize for having a nervous system. Dad looked at me then, eyes wet. Mom said nothing. You did not get me help, I said. You got yourself vacations from me. That sentence emptied the air. Mom began to cry. Quietly at first, then with her hand over her mouth. When I was younger, that would have ended the conversation. My mother's tears were like a fire alarm. Everyone evacuated the topic. Dad comforted her. Ryan looked panicked. I apologized for making her feel bad. This time, no one moved. Dad looked at her but did not touch her. I looked at the oak tree behind them. Mom wiped her face. I don't know how to fix this. It was the first honest thing she had said. You cannot fix my childhood, I said. She cried harder. Then what do you want? That question used to terrify me because I did not know the answer. Wanting things in my family was treated like taking up extra space. This time, I had a list. I want you to stop saying I chose Aunt June over family vacations. Mom nodded. I want you to correct anyone you told that to. She hesitated. Claire, that is not negotiable. Dad said we can do that. Mom looked at him. He did not back down. Small miracles are sometimes just cowards getting tired of themselves. Want no more posts about misunderstandings, I said. Dad nodded. I want you to stop using Aunt June as the villain because she kept the receipts you hoped would disappear. Mom's mouth tightened, but she nodded. And I want time. How much time? She asked. As much as I need. That is vague. So was being sent away for 8 summers. Dad flinched. Mom looked down. The conversation lasted another hour, but those were the important parts. There were apologies, some better than others. There were defensive moments. There were long silences. Dad admitted he had known it was wrong by the 3rd summer and kept telling himself changing the pattern would cause more conflict than maintaining it. More conflict for who? I asked. He said, for your mother. I said, thank you for telling the truth. He looked relieved. Then I added, that makes it worse. Because it did. He had not been confused. He had been afraid of discomfort. And I had paid for his fear. Before they left, Mom asked if she could hug me. I said no. She looked devastated. I let her be devastated. After they drove away, Aunt June walked over and sat across from me at the picnic table. Well, she said, pouring coffee into the thermos lid, that was ugly with a few useful bones. I laughed because only Aunt June could review a family confrontation like a soup recipe. Do you think she meant any of it? Some enough. For what? I did not answer. She slid the coffee toward me. That is the question, kid. In the months that followed, my family changed in uneven, uncomfortable ways. Mom did correct the story, though not with grace. She called several relatives and said there had been more complexity around the summer arrangements than she had previously shared. Aunt June made her try again. Eventually, Mom sent a written message to the family group chat. It said when Claire was growing up, Mark and I often sent her to stay with June while we traveled with Ryan. We told ourselves this was best for everyone, but it excluded Claire and hurt her deeply. She did not choose to miss those trips. We are sorry for letting people believe otherwise. It was not perfect. It was enough for that day. Ryan and Natalie postponed the wedding by 6 months. My mother told people it was because venues were complicated. Natalie told me over coffee that it was because she needed to see whether Ryan could hold a boundary when his mother cried. Can he? Asked. Natalie stirred her drink. Sometimes. That's honest. I'm marrying the man, not the family mythology. I liked her more after that. Ryan tried, clumsily, but he tried. He stopped using old nicknames. He asked about Aunt June without making jokes. He invited me to lunch without our parents. Sometimes he said the wrong thing and then corrected himself before I had to. Once he started to say when you chose to stay with Aunt June, then froze. I watched him. He closed his eyes and said, no, when they sent you to Aunt June, thank you. I hate how automatic it is. Me too. That was sibling repair, at least for us, not sudden closeness. Not matching bracelets and childhood photos recreated on a beach. Just two adults trying to identify the lies before stepping on them again. My parents were harder. Dad began calling every Sunday evening. The first few calls were awkward enough to qualify as endurance events. He would ask about work, then apologize too generally, then go quiet, almost gave up after the third call. Then, on the fourth, he said, "I found the castle money jar. I was in my kitchen, washing a mug. I turned off the water." "What?" "Your old jar. From when you wanted to go to Disney. It was in a box in the attic. I had forgotten about it until that moment." "Oh, it still has coins in it." I sat down. Dad's voice broke. "I am so sorry, Claire. Not for how you felt, not for the misunderstanding, for the actual thing. I closed my eyes, thank you. I don't know why I kept it. I knew why. Because some part of him had always known. Because guilt stores evidence even when people do not. Mom's repair was less clean. She wanted forgiveness to behave like a calendar event. A conversation, a cry, a hug, then normal. When normal did not return, she grew restless. I apologized, she said during one call. "Yes, I don't know what else to do. Live with the fact that I need time. It feels like punishment." "It is not punishment just because you dislike it." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "June taught you to talk like that." I almost smiled. "No," I said. "You did. Aunt June taught me not to apologize afterward." That call ended badly. Some calls did, but fewer as time went on. The strangest part of healing was realizing that the summers at Aunt June's had become two different stories in my body. One story was abandonment. My parents packing a suitcase and sending me away so they could rest from me. The other story was rescue. Aunt June teaching me how to live, how to earn, how to question, how to sit with pain without becoming its employee. For years, I thought one story had to defeat the other. Aunt June's house had saved me, then maybe my parents sending me there was not so bad. If my parents had abandoned me, then maybe every good memory from those summers was contaminated. But life does not sort itself that neatly. A place can be both the evidence of rejection and the place where you were loved. A summer can hurt you and save you. Aunt June can be the person who opened the door because your parents closed one. The following July, I took a week off work and drove Aunt June to the beach. Not the same beach from the photos. I did not want to haunt myself for no reason. We chose a quiet place with a weathered boardwalk, a bookstore near the pier, and a motel where the air conditioner sounded like an airplane but the sheets were clean. Aunt June complained about sand within 11 minutes. "This is why I garden," she said, shaking out her sandal. "Dirt has the decency to stay where it belongs." Laughed so hard a woman walking past smiled at us. On the second evening, we sat near the water eating takeout from paper boxes. The sky turned pink, then orange, then the kind of deep blue that makes everything feel briefly forgiven. Aunt June handed me an envelope. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside was a photo. At 16, standing beside Aunt June's green pickup in the library parking lot, holding a stack of books and smiling like I had forgotten to be guarded for 1 second. On the back, in Aunt June's handwriting, it said, "Claire, Summer Family, 2013. I stared at it until the ocean blurred. "I didn't know you took this. You looked happy." "Wanted proof." "Proof for who?" She shrugged. "You, me, God, whoever was keeping score." I held the photo carefully. For most of my life, the missing pictures had felt like proof that I was not part of the family. But here was another picture. Not the replacements, not a consolation prize. Something true beside the wound. I had been loved in the summers, not by the people who should have made room for me, but by someone who saw me arrive hurt and decided hurt children still needed pancakes, library cards, driving lessons, and their own money. That matters. But it matters. Ryan and Natalie did eventually get married. Smaller wedding, different venue, no slideshow. My parents attended. Aunt June attended. I attended. There were moments of awkwardness, of course. Families do not become healthy because someone changed the seating chart. Mom cried when Ryan danced with her and looked over at me like she wanted me to witness her grief. I looked away. Dad asked if I wanted cake and then seemed relieved when I said yes, as if cake meant progress. Near the end of the night, Ryan came up to me while Natalie danced with her friends. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You're welcome." He hesitated. "I wanted to ask before I did anything." "That sounds ominous." He smiled nervously. "The photographer is taking family pictures." There it was, the old word, family. But he had asked. That mattered. "Who's in them?" I asked. "Whoever wants to be." Not Mom's version, not Dad's convenience, not Ryan as the center everyone arranged themselves around. Whoever wants to be. Looked across the room at Aunt June, who was eating cake with the seriousness of a judge evaluating evidence. "Only if Aunt June is in them," I said. Ryan looked over at her. For a second, I saw the boy who used to mock her weird house. Then I saw the man trying not to be that boy forever. Of course, he said. So we took the picture. Me, Ryan, Natalie, Mom, Dad, and Aunt June. It was not a perfect picture. Mom's smile was tight. Dad looked like he might cry. Aunt June stood slightly apart because she hated being arranged by photographers. I looked cautious. Ryan looked humbled. Natalie looked relieved. But I was in it. Not hidden. Not explained away. Not sent somewhere else so the frame could feel easier. In it. After the wedding, Mom asked if I wanted a copy. I said yes. She seemed surprised. Maybe she thought I would reject anything that included her. Maybe she still believed boundaries were just punishment wearing nicer shoes. But I wanted the picture because it was true in a way the old ones were not. Not true because everything was fixed. True because everyone in it knew what had happened. There is a difference between a family photo and a family lie. I keep that wedding photo on a shelf now, but not in the center. The center photo is the one Aunt June took of me at 16 with the books. Summer Family, 2013. When people ask about it, I say that's my aunt. She raised the parts of me my parents found inconvenient. Sometimes people laugh, thinking I am joking. Sometimes I let them. Not every truth needs to be handed to every person who walks by. My relationship with my parents is still cautious. I see them sometimes, holidays if I want to. Sunday calls with Dad, less often with Mom. My mother is learning that apology is not a coupon she can redeem for access. My father is learning that peace without truth is just silence with better lighting. Ryan and I are better, not close in the way siblings are when they share a childhood fairly. We cannot invent that now. But we are honest more often than not, and honesty is a sturdier beginning than nostalgia. Aunt June is still Aunt June. She still complains about sand. She still makes coffee strong enough to qualify as a legal stimulant. She still says feelings are allowed but self-pity needs a timer. Every summer, I visit her for a week. By choice. That distinction still feels holy to me. Last year, Mom asked if it hurt her feelings that I spend summer vacation with Aunt June instead of them. I said, Mom, I spent my childhood being sent where you wanted me. Now I go where I am wanted. She did not like that answer. But she did not argue. That is progress in my family. Small, imperfect. Real. If you grew up as the child who was called difficult because you noticed unfairness, I want you to hear this part clearly. Sometimes the story your family tells about you is not a diagnosis. Sometimes it is a receipt for what they did not want to repair. Maybe you were sensitive. Maybe you did cry more easily. Maybe you asked too many questions, needed more reassurance, noticed who got the bigger slice, remembered who was invited and who was not. That did not make you the problem. Children are not born knowing how to make themselves convenient. Someone teaches them. And if you are lucky, someone else teaches them they do not have to stay that way. My parents sent me to Aunt June's every summer so my brother could have family vacations without me. That is the wound. But it is not the whole story, because while they were taking pictures without me, Aunt June was teaching me how to become someone who would one day look at those pictures and say, out loud, I was missing because you removed me. She taught me to keep proof. She taught me to eat even when I was angry. She taught me that a locked door can be protection, not rejection. She taught me that love is not always the person who says family the loudest. Sometimes love is the person who opens the door every June, looks at your suitcase and says, you bring books? And then makes room.